Hello, this is 13 Action News. I'm Trisha Keene. We're glad you're streaming us right now because our 13 Investigates team has some new investigations we want to highlight. Each week, Chief Investigator Darcy Spears, investigative reporter Joe Bartels, and our 13 Investigates team are out there helping you by uncovering problems you need to know about. Here are this week's stories.
Problem doesn't always fix it. In this case, the problem is the state's unemployment system, and it's your money being spent. A lot of it.
13 Chief Investigator Darcy Spears spent more than a year digging into Deter's ongoing problems and uncovers new information on what some consider the cost of failure.
The pain,
5.5-hour wait times, and people being dropped right and left from calls.
and frustration.
I'd been getting unemployment for over a year. All of a sudden, they have this new identification system.
Felt all over the state. 2 contracts signed by the state in August amount to millions of tax dollars because the State Department of Employment, Training and Rehabilitation, known as DETR, admittedly faltered under the strain of pandemic-induced unemployment.
But we were just absolutely overwhelmed with applications and work like we had never seen before.
The newest hurdle came with the recently passed Continued Assistance Act. Congress required states to verify the identity of every single claimant in regular UI and in the PUA system, which serves independent contractors, the self-employed, and gig workers. The goal? To protect legitimate claimants and weed out fraud. DETR told state leaders it did not have the ability to do that.
But we were dealing with just overwhelming fraudulent applications.
The solution was an emergency no-bid contract with Virginia-based ID.me. It runs through the end of this year with a price tag of $1.5 million tax dollars coming from federal coffers. State purchasing rules usually require a competitive bidding process to make sure taxpayers get the most bang for their buck.
But that is quite lengthy. It takes several months.
And no one had that kind of time.
It's not a situation where you would look and say, was this the best investment? We were in an emergency situation.
ID.me is a federally certified credential service provider being used by several states, as well as multiple federal agencies, including Veterans Affairs, Treasury, and the Social Security Administration.
And ID.me is not a new company. But they obviously took on a lot of government contracts at the same time.
Claimants like Janelle Clark and William Carter,
The system is incompetent.
have been stuck in a verification logjam.
It doesn't make sense to me because they're basically duplicating what the state was already doing. Uploading a driver's license, uploading a social security number. They've added taking a video selfie.
Janelle started with DETR.
So I uploaded my social security card, my driver's license, my passport, my birth certificate, pretty much everything but a blood sample.
After 10 weeks with no money, she went through the same process with ID.me.
I've now been manually verified by their employees and verified through ID.me, and they still have a problem with my identity.
How do we address the concerns of people who feel like our federal tax dollars are going for something that's not working?
Well, I would not agree with the premise that they're not working. ID.me has been able to successfully process over 90% of the folks who apply through the online process.
DETR Director Elisa Cafferata and ID.me Senior Vice President Pete Eskew say the primary problem is fraudsters, who account for nearly half of all claims being filed.
And so the goal for us, for state and federal business, is to make sure that the individuals that are truly hurting can gain access to the benefits while preventing criminals from taking money out of the system.
And that inevitably delays the legitimate claimants.
It does. But what we're doing is we're also saving Nevada and all of our state partners money that they would have been paying out to criminals.
Legitimate claimants dealing with 5- and 6-hour wait times to speak to one of ID.me's trusted referees say the company needs to do better.
I don't know why it got so complicated. It sounds like maybe ID.me bit off a bit more than they could chew.
Eskew says ID.me is hiring hundreds of new workers for its online platform and plans to open in-person offices in June here in Las Vegas and nationwide.
So we're trying to combat the wait times that you're hearing about.
His advice to cut the wait: wake up early.
Enter the queue in the mornings of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Particularly the morning means East Coast time. So I would try and push them to go then when we have more staff that are available to handle those calls, if their schedule allows.
Another company handling calls for Nevada is getting an even bigger chunk of our federal tax dollars to help man the phone lines in Dieter's UI call center. Maximus got a $6.4 million no-bid contract, which also goes through the end of 2021.
They actually have UI experience in other states, and they hire people with UI experience. So that was why the emergency contract was granted to them.
Dieter eventually plans to transition all calls to state employees who can handle complicated claims, but Cafferata says the experience is improving.
The escalations now those folks are called back within the week, and we have made significant progress in our PUA backlog. And then we're going to redeploy some of those resources to the UI backlog.
There are about 2,000 people in the PUA backlog compared to 47,000 in regular unemployment. For those awaiting appeal, more than 2,200 are pending review in UI, which Dieter says will take about 2 months to get through. In PUA, more than 25,000 appeals need to be reviewed before they're considered valid.
If you're having a problem specifically with ID.me, we can help. Send me an email with a description of your issues and your contact information, and we will help you get it handled. I've got my email address as well as some tips on how to avoid duplication between Dieter and ID.me on our website at ktnv.com. Darcy Spears, 13 Investigates.
Welcome back, and thanks for watching 13 Investigates. Don't forget that we're online 24/7 on our website, ktnv.com/13 Investigates.
Welcome to the Daily Debrief. I'm Joyce Lupiani, and we are taking a look at today's big story about Dieter and no bid contracts with Chief Investigator Darcy Spears. Thanks for joining us, Darcy.
Of course. Thanks, Joyce.
Why is it so important to shine the light on the no bid process? Are there really that many companies that offer this type of service?
Well, there actually are. ID.me is not the only federally certified credential service provider out there. There are actually at least 16 different companies that do the same thing. So conceivably, and I guess you could say in a more perfect world than we're in, any state purchasing rule would require a state agency like Dieter to solicit requests for proposals and to look at competing bids before signing a contract, because they do have to make sure that the taxpayers are essentially getting the most bang for their buck. Those are the typical rules. What we're being told in this case is that that didn't happen. One company, no bidding, pick who you're going with and go. That was done essentially because we're operating in an emergency situation and in a time frame in which nobody has time to go through the traditional request for proposal process, which can sometimes take months. So you kind of cross your fingers and hope that you're getting the best service for the tax dollars that you're spending. But of course, what we're hearing from claimants that aren't getting the service all of us are paying for is that it's just something that's not working.
You also addressed problems with Dieter's ID.me system. Once again, we heard that Dieter is simply overwhelmed. Is Dieter doing everything it can to resolve the issues?
Well, we definitely can't overstate the overwhelming number of claims that Dieter has been dealing with since the onset of the pandemic and the economic shutdown. It is like nothing anyone's ever seen in our history. So yes, they're overwhelmed, and yes, they continue to be overwhelmed. And again, that goes without saying that that's a factor here. But what a lot of folks who are having trouble are thinking at this point, after we're a year in, is that they should have it figured out by now. They should have beefed up their IT department, their technology, their ability to kind of roll with the punches in order to better service the overwhelming demand. So they will tell you that, yes, they are doing everything that they can, and that they're constantly having to update their code and to reprogram and to constantly deal with federal rules that are changing, eligibility requirements that are changing, and that it's really difficult to keep up with that stuff. However, again, they've had a year to kind of at least get some of those baseline things ironed out. So the frustration remains. And a lot of people do feel that they're just not doing the best job that they could be doing to serve the Nevadans who still need them.
I know that I've personally talked to a lot of people that feel that way. We get like phone calls and messages pretty much every single day from people who feel like Dieter aren't doing quite enough or doing it fast enough. Something I am really curious about, is Nevada the only state suffering through these issues, or is this more of a system-wide failure? Is this happening all over the country?
Well, it's easy to feel like we're operating in a vacuum. The people of Nevada see what the people of Nevada are going through for the most part. We don't hear the local news reports from other cities in other states where there is also a significant unemployment benefit implementation issue. So we're not in a vacuum. We're definitely not the only state that's facing this. A lot of other states, especially those with high unemployment rates, and I think we're the worst, maybe competing with Hawaii, are also having issues and backlogs and people that are waiting far too long to receive their benefits. On a federal level, they've acknowledged that there's an issue there too, in terms of there not being kind of a baseline system, and the Department of Labor is working on improving that. So even though whatever they fix isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all type of system or program, the feds can roll something out that creates a more level playing field for states across the country, so that when they do have to make changes, it's quicker and it's also easier. Going back to your previous thing about all the folks that we've heard from and are we doing our best, we've spoken to in previous stories former Dieter employees, people that were high up in the management chain, who also agree with those claimants that the agency could be doing more, could be more efficient, could be doing better, and that there's some easier fixes that they're just not seeing or not doing. Some complained about failures of leadership at the top in the early days. I think we're seeing a little bit less of that now as we have some consistency. But definitely, I don't think it's fair to say that they're doing everything they can. That in the context of having to consistently update and roll with federal changes that now the federal government is seeing, we need to do something to help them along.
If you would like to read today's big story, please visit ktnv.com.
Welcome back, and thanks for watching 13 Investigates. Don't forget that we're online 24/7 on our website, ktnv.com/13investigates. For sale and relisted, the tiny town of Nipton, California is back on the market.
Now, originally Nipton wanted to be a marijuana mecca, but that then went up in smoke. And 13 Investigates reporter Joe Bartels now takes a look at what is happening in the town that is just 1 hour from Vegas.
The town of Nipton has a rich and colorful past. It was once a hideout for Hollywood stars. It was a stopping point for turn-of-the-century steam engines. And most recently, it was supposed to be a cannabis destination. Well, that idea evaporated. So the town of Nipton, once again, is for sale. On any given day, the number of passing trains easily outnumber the residents of Nipton.
Welcome to Nipton, y'all. I'm so glad you could be here.
About 25 people.
You guys are like the cutest people that are through here today, okay? You get the award.
And sometimes curious passers-by briefly hang their hats in this tiny town.
And here we are today, and I think the most important thing about Nipton today is that a lot of people look at it, you all came out here, you know, taking a couple photos, take a look at some old-time history, but we're still a town.
Speaking of hats, Stephen Sheeran wears a lot of them.
So that's Mount Charleston.
Some days, he's the unofficial historian and town tour guide.
This place has been host to movie stars, railroad magnates, and everything else ever since.
His most important role right now is helping the town's owner sell for the right price and the right buyer.
$2.75 million is both the going, asking, and everything else price. All right, everybody in? All in, all set. Okay.
A look around the town and it's clear it's a fixer-upper.
We did have to close last April for COVID.
The owner says she foreclosed on American Green, an Arizona cannabis company that envisioned Nipton as a weed mecca. Now she wants to sell to someone who will take the town into the future.
I just don't see this being a marijuana cornucopia.
Self-appointed Nipton Mayor Jim Esslinger says whoever the new buyer is has some work cut out for them.
You know, like I say, I'm grandfathered into the town. Yeah, I can be rented from time to time.
And what you get for it is the general store here, right? The Outpost, the restaurant, the hotel, which opened in 1905. It's got 5 rooms. Then there's 5 cabins. We have a container conversion. We have camp spots, and then the RV spaces across the road.
There's also more than 120 years of history.
You ever seen a can opener like that? Like, wah, 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 off of you.
Signs of a simpler time.
This here, all right, didn't come off a Tesla.
And the people from decades ago.
It's clear when you drive through town, it's not a ghost town. We have ghosts, but this is not a ghost town.
Sheeran showed us the former teepees that were used for glamping, now ravaged by the sun and persistent desert winds.
But they all have a shower and they all have an air conditioning unit.
Tiny homes were part of the brief business model, and even a year-long closure has proven tough to keep people away.
People come through and go, we just had to come by and see it. We haven't been here in 5 years, and so it's a little bit heartbreaking not to be able to spool out a Nipton burger. But Nipton's a town too tough to die. I mean, it will be back.
About 30 potential buyers have expressed interest in Nipton.
So we're talking to a group off the East Coast who a well-recognized name. Part of their family wants to see something going forward that is green, is sustainable, recognizes the past, and embraces how we can do something better for the future.
A future for an Old West town.
It's an easy, peaceful feeling out here.
That needs a new owner and a new direction for the people of Nipton. The town's current owner, Roxanne Lang, pictured here with her late husband Jerry Freeman, says that he really saved the town in the early 80s. Jerry had dreams of turning the place into a green and sustainable establishment. Roxanne tells us that she hopes that the next owner does something similar. Joe Bartels, 13 Investigates.
Welcome back, and thanks for watching 13 Investigates. Don't forget that we're online 24/7 on our website, ktnv.com/13investigates.
Well, now for the second week in a row, FA has been blah in health inspector reports.
And the manager of this week's restaurant is a self-proclaimed dirty dining fan who welcomed Chief Investigator Darcy Spears' visit as an opportunity to fire back at the health district.
We can show you the sign, but we can't say the name of this restaurant in Beltway Plaza on Eastern and Serene.
But if you say it right, you got to be careful.
Yes.
That's because pho, properly pronounced, is pho, and then you get into some wordplay. No fun and games with the health district, though, slapping the restaurant with a 38 demerit C grade on its April 8th inspection.
There's a lot of confusion over there because that day we have the delivery.
Manager Yang Tran says the small kitchen presents a big challenge on delivery day.
So the entire kitchen was filled with stuff.
And they had the fridge doors open for a while, which put lots of food in the temperature danger zone.
I tried to explain to the inspector.
But that didn't erase the violation.
It was a pretty bad timing for us.
Cooked rice, cooked noodles, and cooked egg had to be thrown out due to unsafe temperatures. Other violations highlighting the small kitchen space included a container of cooked egg rolls touching a garbage can, a box of produce stored on the floor under the sink, and dry rice noodles stored on top of an old detergent container.
What was accepted before for the other 2 inspection wasn't accepted this time.
Tran says inconsistent enforcement makes it hard to keep up with the rules, citing the surprise violations for an employee's cell phone, cigarettes, and medications stored above a food prep table.
It was right here for 3 years because I told them I don't have a lot of space. My employee needs somewhere to put their stuff. So this is what we were using, and it was fine for the last 4 or 5 inspections.
Inspectors wrote up employees for improper hand washing after cracking raw eggs, keeping a beverage on a prep table next to open customer foods, and prepping food in a waste oil container. They also found moldy garlic in the cooler.
It's just that tiny little garlic clove. If I see it, my employees see it, they would throw it out right away.
No one's going to chop up a moldy clove and put it in your customers' food.
We're not going to risk getting sued over anything, getting customers sick. You see, my kitchen is really clean. That's why there's no demerit taken down for grease buildup, no infestation.
Tran says he was expecting a B grade on inspection day for a few noted violations. The 38 demerit C came as a shock, but he's owning up.
I just want to apologize. I know it's my responsibility as the manager to taking care of the kitchen even more, but I'll try my best.
And it's already showing. Reinspection on Monday resulted in a 0 demerit A grade.
In the near future, I'm just going to try harder to see, if we can do anything more to improve.
Repeat offender Quality Food Service returns to Dirty Dining for the second time this month. They've now had 3 trucks shut down at the Resorts World construction site on the Strip, the latest on April 5th for 2 imminent health hazards and 33 demerits. Quality's number 6 truck was operating without its generator on to properly power the refrigeration unit. All the food in the make table was so deep in the temperature danger zone, inspectors measured it at more than 30 degrees warmer than the health district says is safe. They had to throw out French fries, sliced tomatoes, cooked rice, bags of shredded cheese, an open can of mushrooms, and multiple flats of eggs. A food handler used bare hands on ready-to-eat lettuce and tomatoes. There was no running water at the 3-compartment sink. Ready-to-eat corn dogs, ham, and burritos were in the same container as raw pork, and raw beef was thawing in the sink next to dirty dishes. There were washing dishes in a dirty old food container, and the truck floor was littered with plates for customer food. Quality has now been flagged for a history of noncompliance and must have a supervisory conference with the health district. Owner George Morales didn't respond to our calls for comment.
We also had a closure for excessive demerits at La Botana, a food booth at the Broadacre Swamp Meet. You'll find details on that on our website at ktnv.com. Darcy Spears, 13 Investigates.
Thank you for watching. Join us again next week on your favorite streaming device for all new stories by our 13 investigative team. I'm Trisha Keene with 13 Action News.